I think the overall vision for the town, which is to do the best we can in terms of providing services for the people, and doing the best we can in terms of managing the budget, doing the best we can to bring businesses here, new businesses, new employment opportunities, new revenue opportunities for the town. Selectman Whiteside is looking once again to continue to consolidate and organize town records. She likes doing that sort of thing. She's working on the Lopes Playground rebuild, which is a huge project and is going to require a lot of work and a lot of volunteerism and a fair amount of money as well. Selectman Tropiano wants to work with the Sewer Commission and the Fire and Water Districts so that we can get the information we need to finally move to the sewer rate, where part of the rate is determined by how much water you use, because that directly impacts what your rate should be, we believe, and also the sewer commissioners believe should be the rate charged. That was one of his things. Alan Slavin was looking to continue working on transportation issues. That's always been a big favorite of his. And Tony Scarziotti wants to continue trying to work with some of the merchants in the villages, both Onset and Wareham. So those are some of the things that we're going to be working on that you should expect to see back and forth occasionally on the agendas as we go forward, as they do the work, as they come forward to say, well, I've gotten to this point with this, here's my report. Or they say, I've gotten here, but I need some additional help, and talk to the town administrator or to me about getting that help. Well, it's not a matter of a lack of desire, I can tell you that. The issue is simply one of funding. The limits we face under 2.5, Proposition 2.5, which is that we can't increase our overall tax levy, which is the total amount we can tax. That's what the tax levy is. And we're limited to 2.5% a year increase. So at the end of the day, by the time we get done with the things we have to do, there's next to no money for discretionary employee hiring. And the state doesn't require us to have a council on aging, and they don't require us to have a library either. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, once we get done funding the things that we have to have in order to function and stay in good financial condition with the Department of Revenue and good reporting condition with the Department of Revenue and other state agencies, we just don't have the money to fully support sort of the, I don't want to call them optional, but unfortunately, under our governmental system, they become optional departments. I don't know that the people would go along with that. Back in 2014, we tried to do an operational override, and it got defeated by, I believe, 68 to 32%. It wasn't even competitive. In a football game, it would have been a blowout, a 4-touchdown blowout. The people spoke loudly. We heard them. We gave them the choice of maintaining and perhaps even increasing some services. They said, hell no, and we respected that decision, and we made the cuts we had to make in order to have a balanced budget, which we're required to do by the state. And that's one of the Council on Aging was one of the things, and the whole elderly services aspect of the town was one of the things that unfortunately took the hit. The library did as well. So did the police department and the municipal maintenance department at that time. They didn't escape. Nobody really did. Well, right now, that's in the hands of the sewer commissioners. They're elected officials. They've been in there since 2015. We did a lot of work the first 2 or 3 years I was on the board. We had a good consultant in. They came in, they looked at our operation, they made recommendations about how to come up with a blended rate where everybody would pay a basic minimum amount. And then above and beyond that, it would be dependent on usage. They said that would give us a more stable way of billing people. It would be more equitable because, just because somebody is only here for the summer doesn't mean we don't have the cost of building and maintaining the pipe that goes in front of their house. It still has to be there to get to somebody else. So we passed those recommendations on to the sewer commissioners, And since then, there have been some issues with negotiating with the two separate water departments, the Onset Water and the Wareham Water District, to get those numbers. But I understand from what Selectman Tropiano said last night that apparently some agreement has been reached, and we're hopeful with that. That would strictly be where we don't provide the water. That would be not so much our decision because the water districts are responsible for their own metering. So that's not necessarily something we would get directly involved in. It's possibly something that could be brought up in a negotiation with them, but it's not something we could impose. The vision that we have as a Board of Selectmen and also the administration isn't that the village ends at CVS. It's that it continues all the way up to the nail factory and all the way down through Bessie Park to British Landing. But ultimately we hope to tie all of these areas together and promote the backside of Main Street, which is Merchants Way, and then continuing up behind the existing properties on Main Street North, and tying it all in with possibly a boardwalk, and to attract people here using the boardwalk, using amenities, getting some of the restaurant owners to face the water. We have a study that's been on, sitting around and unfortunately in some ways gathering dust since 2009 that was done, that is really good as far as surveying the buildings, talking about the conditions of the buildings, and it talks about what you can do with some of those properties. This study is more geared to telling us what we should do with those properties. These people are experts in studying redevelopment. Mass Development is a quasi-public agency that has redeveloped Fort Devens, which was a huge, the Mass Military Reservation out at Fort Devens, which was a huge project. They've been involved in New Bedford, Fall River, redeveloping Brownsfields, contaminated sites. And so we have already received a $90,000 grant from them to study the environmental conditions at the Tremont Nail Factory. That did turn up some contamination, not as bad as I had thought, but enough so that we have to do a second, more costly study called a Phase 2 Comprehensive Site Assessment. And before Mass Development is willing to give us the $300,000 we've requested for that environmental report and study and filing, they want us to study actual redevelopment of the site and to come up with a plan to redevelopment of the site. Because we have a lot of retail in town. We don't lack retail. But retail jobs don't pay as well as light manufacturing, as well as medical and jobs of that nature. You alluded earlier to the aging population. To me, that just cries out for medical. That cries out for more services, you can call them geriatric services, whatever you want to call them, but in the medical arena, that's going to be a big growth factor in this town. And so what we'd like to do is look at our zoning and see if we can anticipate what the future is going to hold for demand and then rezone accordingly so that we're ready for that stuff when it comes. As far as the small businesses go, we don't have a lot of small retail left anymore. It's how to bring those back. We have to take a look at the conditions on Merchants Way and do something with those. Nobody wants to eat on a back deck and have a beer overlooking the water next to a dumpster. It's not going to work. So we've got to figure out if there's a way to sort of collectivize the dumpsters, have the dumpsters in 3 or 4 locations, which might mean people bringing their trash, to the dumpster instead of just walking out the back door and hucking the stuff in. But it's those little things that I think can help drive some of the redevelopment down there and some of the reuse. The other thing we're doing that's interesting is, I don't know if you know, but we took $200,000 out of our community development block grant a year or so ago and put it into what's called it's an unfortunate name, but it's what the federal government calls it, a slum and blight study for Onset. And what that is they designate an area, they go around and they inventory all the buildings. What is the condition? What is the shape of it? What is it? And then they give it ratings. Once that study is complete, you're eligible for certain grants and various economic incentives to do things in those areas. We had one done in Wareham Village and heading up Sandwich Road a little ways. in, I want to say, 2007, that's expiring this year. We've taken $80,000 out of this year's community development block grant application so that we can refresh that. And once we do that, we can start putting some of those monies, those grants, into those properties. Perhaps we can go to the business owners and say, we notice, the backside could use a little bit of work here. We've got a grant program, or it's a 75% grant, 25% loan, whatever it is. That way we can start, just attacking some of the issues there, one property at a time. You're not going to fix them all at once. In 3 years' time, you're not going to spruce it all up. It doesn't work like that. But if you can start hitting here and there, eventually everybody starts upping their game a little bit. We're told that the state budget next year is going to be a mess too, local aid isn't going to be that great, whatever. We just roll with the punches. There are things that we can't control. We rely on our town administrator to allocate the funds as he thinks best with our input. And the chips fall where they may. We know we can't spend more than we have. We've done that in the past, and it just hasn't stood us well.